Namaskar. Very warm good evening to all of you present in the second day of our 3 days series of Webinar on GST laws. Today, Shiva Prasad Padi sir, Practice Cost Accountant, Bhubaneswar, and CMA Madan Man Mishra sir, DGM Finance, Nalco. Vice Chairman of EIRC and Chapter, respected senior members, MC members, and members of Centers in Odisha, academicians, students, and stakeholders. Today, some of our past chairmen joined, CMA Debashish Shah sir, CMA Damodar Mishra sir, and it is special CMA SN Das, Secretary ICAI Rajpur chapter also joined with us. Chairman of the chapter CMA Mukesh Chube and other professional colleagues in the managing committee. I, on behalf of the organizing team and on my own behalf, warmly welcome you all to the today's webinar on GST, ITC and related critical issues. We have with us eminent resource persons, CMA SP Padi sir and CMA MM Mishra sir. That is combination of both practice and service. Hope today's session will be more interactive and knowledge sharing session for all of us. We have one more session in this series on tomorrow on the theme Special Audit under Section 66 and readiness of CMH. Before introduction of resource persons, as a matter of respect of our profession, I would like to request our official to play our institute anthem and request all to be with a folded hand during institute anthem. Thank you. Now it is time to welcome and give brief introduction of today's research person. I heartily welcome you, sir, on behalf of the Bhubaneswar and all the chapters of Odisha. CMA Shiva Prasad Padi, our own member, one research person. CMA Shiva Padi was admitted as a fellow member of the Institute of Cost Accountants of India in 2005 and a practiced cost accountant. He has done his master in commerce as well as master in business management in finance. He is also an associate member of Indian Institute of Insurance Surveyors and Loss Assessors. CMA Padi started working in a manufacturing company at middle level management and then spent 6 years in full-time academics before starting his full-time practice as a cost and management accountant in the year 2013. He is the former Dean Academics of IMIS Bhubaneswar and offered papers as a visiting faculty at XIMB, IMIS, Xavier University, Ravenshaw University, KID University, and few other business schools. He has taken sessions at XLRI Jamshedpur on different subjects. CMA Padi was the chairman of Institute of Cost Accountants of India, Bhubaneswar chapter in the year 2008-9 and the Eastern India Regional Council for the year 2015 and 16. Thank you, sir, for acceptance of our invitation and whole-time support in the chapter. Now, come to our second resource person today's topic, CMA Madan Mishra sir, CMA Madan Mishra sir is an associate member of the Institute of Cost Accountants of India. He is a science graduate from Utkal University in the 1991. After completion of the cost accountancy course in the year 1997, he joined NHPC in 1998 as a trainee officer and rendered professional service up to 2011. He joined at NALCO as senior manager in the year 2011. At present, he is working as DGM Finance at NALCO for indirect tax related matters. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation. Thank you. Now, taking much of time, I would like to request CMA Mukesh Chobe, Chairman of the chapter, please address. Mukesh, unmute your mic.
Thank you, Shakti sir. My namaskar and welcome you all to our second day event on 3 days series of event on GST laws. I might likewise want to offer my thanks to our regarded resource person CMA Patil sir and CMA MM Mishra sir, who have accepted our invitation and encouraged us to conduct series of event on GST laws. Esteemed senior members, past chairman of ICAI EIRC and chapter, my dear CMA participants and academicians joined on the occasion, MC members of Bhubaneswar chapter and all other chapters at Odisha and stakeholders. Thank you to each and everyone for one you have been with us today. We are very pleased to be able to welcome those you have been able with us for a long time now, as well as fully joined us today. On behalf of the Bhubaneswar chapter, entire organizing team, and my personal behalf, affectionately welcome you all to the today's event on GST, ITC, and related critical issues. I also convey my heartiest thanks to all of for your continued support, which is inspiring us for conducting more and more programs in virtual platform on various contemporary topics to enhance our professional skills and knowledge. Shakti sir have already highlighted about next day program. We will hear from our person Patil sir and Mr. sir regarding the ITC and the various issues regarding ITC, which yesterday actually many of our participants were asking more questions on ITC. For them today's program will be a nice one for their for attending their queries. I request you all to attend and interact in large number and make it a grand success. Hope today's deliberation, ITC and related critical issues will be much helpful to all in practical field. I pray you for Almighty health, safety and prosperity. Thanking you all. Jai Jagannath.
Thank you, CMA Mukesh Chobe, Chairman of Bhubaneswar chapter. Now I would like to request CMA SP Patil sir, please address on the topic.
Very good evening to one and all. Thank you very much, Chairman of the Chapter, Chairman, Professional Development Committee of the Chapter, other Managing Committee members, officers and staffs, very senior respected members like Devasi Saha sir, SN Das sir, and many others who are attending this web interaction. And I'm equally delighted to see our present and future of the profession who are very young and doing excellently well in the corporate and world and in practice, including Deepak and Ram Shankar and many others who have learned and now sharing their knowledge and experience with all of us. In fact, input tax credit as a subject is one of the very important topic in GST law, and I hope the PowerPoint is visible to all of you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Can
Yes.
someone confirm whether the PPT
Yes,
is
sir.
visible?
Yes, sir. Visible, sir. Visible, sir.
So those who are either working in corporates and dealing with goods and services tax, or those who are rendering their services as a practitioner or a consultant or as an auditor, very often we find input tax credit as a subject to be very important, interesting. To some extent, yes, there are still certain confusions in the minds of many taxpayers. Mistakes are still continuously done by some of the taxpayers even after 43 months of implementation of GST. 17, 18 and 18, 19, 17, 18 and 18, 19 annual return has been filed now. But still, from our experience, we can tell everyone, or we can opine that a lot of errors inadvertently was done by many of the taxpayers, for which a lot of interest amount was to be paid by them while making reversal, particularly ITC, which was wrongly taken. So that is why the importance of a session on ITC is always felt necessary for any professional. And thanks to the chapter and chairman and the managing committee members who could organize this interaction session and given this opportunity. So before, in fact, these are the critical issues which we will discuss certainly in details, which are very relevant in today's context. But before that, I will just take some time discussing the general provisions of relating to input tax credit, so that maybe some of the questions which we are getting yesterday probably will be clarified in the due course once we discuss some of the relevant provisions from the CGST Act and the CGST rules pertaining to input tax credit. Now, when we talk about input tax credit, particularly this term input, input goods and input services, or input services and capital goods have been defined in the Act. And the section 2 subsection 63 tells us that input ITC means credit of input tax, and input tax term has been defined in section 2 subsection 62. So we will certainly not read the rule or the provision of the Act and interpret them one by one, but I want your attention to these definitions, because these definitions sometimes help us to clarify some of our questions or some of our doubts. So the term input has been defined, the term input service has been defined, and the term input tax has been defined. And ITC means credit of input tax, that is what the Act defines. Similarly, the term goods and services has also been defined, as we all know. We will not go details into the definition, because the definition someone can go through again and again comfortably at their ease and requirement. But I want to make you clear that these terms which has been defined carry a lot of sense when we deal with the term ITC. Similarly, the term ISD, input service distributor, has been defined by section 2 subsection 61. Now, what is important for me is these two sections, particularly 16, 17 and 18, these three sections in particular of the Act. Now, when I talk about eligibility and conditions for taking ITC under section, just a moment, it will be okay if I switch off my video, because this is taking some portion of my laptop, and so I can mute the video, and at times I'll again make it full screen or switch on the video. Now, when I come to section 16 of the Act, particularly which talks about the eligibility and conditions for taking input tax credit, we all should understand the essence of this section 16, which is the most important section of relating to input tax credit. That input tax credit is to be availed by a taxpayer, and it is an exercise which a taxpayer has to it is an option which a taxpayer has to exercise by filing GSTR 3B, and the credit will appear in the electronic credit ledger of such person. This is what section 16 subsection 1 talks about, that only registered persons are eligible for ITC, needless to say, and only registered persons are entitled to take ITC for goods or services or both, which are either used by them or intended to be used by them in course or furtherance of business. This is in fact the essence of ITC. We draw all our arguments from this provision in particular, which section 16 subsection 1 provides. Now, there are few conditions, as we all very well know, that in order to take ITC, certain conditions are to be essentially fulfilled. There are ideally 4 conditions which someone has to remember while availing ITC. But from my experience or from our experience, we have seen that many taxpayers during the first year, that is 17-18 and 18-19, probably did not adhere to the rules in respect to availment of ITC properly, but they have availed ITC and even filed return and utilized that. Now, the 4 important conditions what section 16 talks about or provides is, the taxpayer who wants to avail ITC must have a valid tax invoice or a debit note. And what is a valid tax invoice? What is a valid debit? Of course, the term valid is not there, but tax invoice means it is a tax invoice as per the provision of the invoice rules again, or the CGST rule which talks about the invoice, tax invoice. So a proper tax invoice and a proper debit note is one of the important or mandatory condition in order to avail input tax credit. Second mandatory condition, which section 16 subsection 2 provides, that such goods or services must have been received by the taxpayer before availing ITC. When we talk about availing ITC, needless to say, we are talking about availing ITC by filing GSTR 3B, and that amount comes to our credit ledger. And subsequently, when we utilize that while discharging our tax liability, we call that utilization. So first we avail, then we utilize ITC. But to avail ITC, in fact, possession of the valid tax invoice and a debit note is a must, and such goods and services must have been received by them. That is why ITC is not taken on advances. Yesterday we had few questions, and hope these basic discussions will clarify those doubts. Then when we talk about another important point, section 16 subsection 2 clause C, it tells that the taxpayer must have paid the tax to the government either in form of cash or by way of utilization of his input tax credit. He must have filed return is one condition, and then he must have paid the tax amount to the government. So these 4 basic conditions are to be examined very carefully and very minutely before availing ITC by any taxpayer. Hope I'm audible, and we are not spending much time discussing the issue in details, but we are just touching the important provisions. We will not be able to discuss the section 16, 17 and 18 in detail, even the rules in detail, but I will just touch upon the points because that may clarify some of our issues. Then even ITC for taxes paid on inward supply on reverse charge basis is also applicable, as we all know for that. Then another very important critical issue which probably many taxpayers are yet to follow very correctly is unless supplier is paid within 180 days from date of invoice, the ITC availed is to be reversed, or if ITC has not been availed, then also that is good. So payment is to be made to the supplier within 180 days from the date of issue of the invoice, which is one of the very important provision. We will discuss more about it, but this is what section 6, one of the provision of section 16 subsection 2. We all know that the ITC can be availed by a taxpayer before filing the return of September month of the next financial year. That means for 17-18 and 18-19, even for 19-20 financial year, ITC cannot be availed because the due date for availing ITC was maybe 20th October of the next financial year for these last three financial years. Now, if we talk about 2021, which is the current financial year, any ITC pertaining to this can be availed before filing the monthly return. Due date of filing the monthly return of September of next financial year, that is 21. So these are the basic conditions which section 16 deals with. Fine, and needless to say, if depreciation is availed on capital goods and plant and machinery, then ITC cannot be claimed on that again. So these are the few basic provisions which section 16 talks about. Then section 17 in fact talks about apportionment of credit, and very important is blocked credit or credit ITC which are restricted. Now I will spend some time discussing about provisions of section 17(5) which talks about blocked credit, because from our experience and even when we have done some due diligence for some companies, or what we call a GST health checkup for some companies, small, medium and big, and when we have done even GST audit on section 35(5) of some companies, we found that section 17 subsection 5, that is block credit, probably has not been very correctly understood by many taxpayers, even after first year or second year or in the third year also. That is why let us friends understand what is the provision of section 17 subsection 5, as any wrong availment of ITC is very costly, because yesterday also Deepak sir and Avinash sir was explaining about this, that interest at the rate of 18% is to be paid if reversal is done for any ITC that has been wrongly availed by a taxpayer, which is again reversing it in his GSTR 3B and paying interest thereof. Now, when we talk about the block credit in particular, the very first item that comes is motor vehicle. Of course, time to time, we found that the clarifications and the amendments made to the Act and notifications have clarified some of the doubts. The very first item is motor vehicle. Motor vehicle, if it is not more than 13% seated, if the sitting capacity is not more than 13 persons, then ITC is not available. We have seen that many taxpayers availed ITC even on motor vehicle, even on repair and maintenance insurance pertaining to general insurance or vehicle insurance pertaining to motor vehicle, which is in fact a block credit. What is eligible is a motor vehicle which sitting capacity is more than 13 persons, including driver, and only in those cases where the motor vehicles are used for further supply of such motor vehicle, that means a dealer, or it is used for transportation of passengers, or the motor vehicle is used for commercial purpose like imparting training or driving such motor vehicle, then only it is eligible. Otherwise, motor vehicle and all related expenses relating to a motor vehicle are indeed blocked for any taxpayer. When we talk about similarly vessels and aircrafts, it is again blocked unless it is used for the same business or for transportation or for training, navigating, etc. If it is used for transportation of goods, then ITC will be eligible for vessels and aircrafts, of course. Now, when we talk about motor vehicle, the clarification later came that any insurance or any servicing or repair and maintenance done in relation to a motor vehicle is also blocked. So this is something which people have done, few errors in general, but I think by now all of us has a very clear understanding about this block credit relating to motor vehicles in particular. Similarly, we all know that section 17 subsection 5 clause B subclause 1 provides that many expenses which are related to employees or relating to personal expenses related of employees, kind of, maybe food is one, or maybe beauty treatment, health services, these are all again blocked. Many occasions we have seen that food and hiring of motor vehicles, ITC has been taken by some of the taxpayers. Then even expenses which are incurred for employees, for example, they are maybe for their beauty treatment or for their health services, or any cosmetic or plastic surgery done for any of the employee, or even health insurance, life insurance. If it is pertaining to a specified purpose, then it is eligible. Otherwise, life insurance and health insurance premium is also not eligible for ITC. And food and beverages, meeting expenses, outdoor catering, they are all blocked, including hiring of motor vehicle. What is not blocked is GTA. Some people also think that goods and transport agency or services, GTA services, are also blocked, but that is not blocked. What is not blocked is hotel, stay in a hotel. But food and beverages taken in a hotel, if it is a part of hotel bill, then that would be blocked, certainly. But yes, the very fundamental thing which we always examine is whether it is in course or in furtherance of business or not. If it is not in course or in furtherance of business, then it is not, ITC is not eligible. Very recently, we got an AAR advance ruling which told that, which provides that construction of bungalow of directors for a company, of course it is works contract, but they were also into construction business. So that is also not eligible for ITC. So one has to understand, of works contract is a block credit. Then personal expenses like membership of a club or health or fitness center is a block credit. Vacation given to employees is a block credit. Rent-a-cab is a block credit. In fact, these block credit people, I think, are still to understand in clear. Works contract, which often baffles a person in respect to availment of input tax credit, because plant and machinery, if it is relating to plant and machinery, movable property and relating to plant and machinery, ITC is available. Now that plant and machinery term, of course, they have explained to a great extent, but still there are certain confusions in some occasions, which Madan Mishra sir will in fact discuss, few of the real life situations relating to block credit and relating to township expenses and relating to advance supply and similar from his personal experience. Now one has to in fact understand the block credit in detail because particularly this plant and machinery, when we talk about this pipeline laid outside the factory premises, Madan Mishra sir will take up this issue in form of a real life situation. Is a block credit. So how you actually interpret this term from case to case basis and how you avail ITC it will be a purely decision of the respective taxpayer. But this very often in fact confuses a taxpayer as regards to whether to avail input tax credit or to not to avail input tax credit. Now, another very fundamental principle when we follow with section 17 subsection is when a person is engaged in supply of goods or services are both partly for his business purpose and partly for other purpose, or similarly when it is partly taxable and when it is partly not taxable. That will in fact we will talk about rule 42, but section 17 subsection 1 provides that when a taxpayer is providing goods or services or both, which are partly for business purpose and partly for other purpose, then the credit shall be restricted only to the extent of the utilization of such input or input services or input or input services in respect or capital goods in respect to his business only. So the apportionment of credit provision is also to be very clearly understood. Similarly, when someone is engaged in exempt and non-exempt supply, then proportionate credit is to be taken for that. Now, in fact, section 18, when we come to section 18, it talks about availability of credit in special circumstances. Section 19, in fact, also talks about availment of credit in respect to capital goods and for job work. So I will deal with it later if we find time, but let me quickly touch upon some of the rules which are very important. In fact, if you visit to the CBIC portal, you find the rules which is very recently uploaded and updated till 1st January 2021. Now, some of the rules are important. Out of all the 10 rules, we'll not discuss all the 10 rules, but some of the rules are extremely important, that is why we need to discuss some of the rules here before we proceed to the critical issues. It is 7 p.m. and I will take another 25 to 30 minutes. Then Mr. Sir will take his session. Now, 36 in fact talks about the documentary requirement for payment of tax. And this is what I was referring, like an invoice issued by a supplier or a debit note issued by a supplier or a bill of entry or an invoice of ISD. These are the documents on the basis of which only ITC can be taken. We are getting news about the fake invoice racket and fraudulent availment of ITC throughout the country, and number of arrests was made, and a lot of action we could see from the department and particularly DGGI and all. But the Rule 36, when you look into it, tells that a taxpayer can avail ITC only when he possesses these 4 documents, either an invoice or a debit note or a bill of entry in case of import, and the invoice raised by the input service distributor, IST. Then we will not spend time discussing the rule or the provisions relating to a tax invoice that someone can very well go through. But yes, in real life, what we find that when we look at the provisions of a tax invoice and when we look at GSTR 2A and the invoice issued by the service provider or a supplier, we find in many occasions that the invoice number is different or the date is different. Sometimes even the tax rate is different. So the physical invoice and the invoice uploaded in GSTR 2A doesn't match in these 4 or 5 aspects. For example, GSTI number, invoice date, taxable value, tax rate and tax amount. Then ITC can be may not be allowed by the department when they notice this later on when they come for audit. So that is something which someone has to be very particular. Of course, we will discuss about Rule 34 and others. Now, ITC can be availed only when these documents are available. Otherwise, ITC cannot be availed. Now, section Rule 37 talks about reversal of ITC. Reversal of ITC in case of non-payment of consideration. So whenever a registered person who has availed ITC for any supply but he doesn't pay, as we have already discussed about it, then he has to reverse it and interest is to be paid at the rate of 18%. that 180 days from the date of issue of invoice. Banking company, financial institution will not discuss this 38, will not discuss 39. IST also will not discuss, because many taxpayers do not have IST. Very few taxpayers have IST, but anyway, IST, the concept, I hope we all know that the IST distributes all its ITC amongst its various registered tax persons for whom it incurs the expenditure, and in that ratio they issue the IST credit and raise an invoice. Coming to other rules like sale, merger, amalgamation, rule 41 and 42 are need based. Only when that is required, someone need to go through that provision. Otherwise, it's not a very important rule for all. But rule 43 sometimes is very important, like the reversal to be made in case of disposal of a capital goods. So that also I'll try to touch upon through an example later, not now. Now, coming to the the very first one that I want your attention is this notification number 94. Notification number 94, 2000, which was published only on December 22nd, 2020, roughly a month ago. Now, in this notification 94, just let me show you that for a moment. Yes. Hope you find this notification on your screen. This notification number 94 2020 CT dated 22nd December 2020 is one of the very important notification. Of course, out of 95, this was the last but one notification of 2020, and this is very important because there are certain provisions which are maybe in some way I can in some way I can tell that they are very important in respect to ITC and many of the taxpayers. Yeah, hope I'm audible. I'm connected and audible. Yes. So now when I look at this notification 94 particularly, yeah. So when I look into this notification 94 particularly, I will draw your attention towards the amendment made in rule 21 in particular. So in rule 21, clause E, clause F and clause G has been inserted. Now, if you look into this 94, friends, this is very important for all of us. That is why I want your... Yeah, there is some disturbance from some participants. So if you can mute yourself. Yeah. Now, clause E of this particular notification provides that now a departmental officer can proceed for cancellation of your GSTN number. Whenever an officer finds that a taxpayer avails ITC exceeding the permissible amount of ITC, there is some noise from some participants. Yeah, okay. Fine. So I want your attention towards clause E of this particular rule 21 of this notification, which became effective from 22nd December 2020. Now, as I was telling you, any officer, departmental officer, can actually proceed and cancel GSTN number of a taxpayer who avail wrong ITC, in excess ITC than the permissible amount. So clause E, section 21, rule 21, clause E is now introduced through this notification, which provides that excess ITC someone cannot avail more than the permissible amount. We'll discuss about the other rules little later. Now, clause F also talks about matching between GSTR 1 and GSTR 3B. Now, department can cancel even registration if liability under the GSTR 3B is less than the GSTR 1 for more than one tax period. Now, any taxpayer, we have to take it very seriously. In fact, any taxpayer, if there is difference in GSTR 3B and GSTR 1 for more than one tax period, then also the the registration can be cancelled. And clause G talks about violates if provision of rule 86B is violated. We'll discuss what is 86B. Then also department can cancel the registration. Then from this, if you understand that department now can cancel registration if the person is not conducting, the business from the declared place of business. That is why principal place of business and additional place of business is very important. If invoice are issued without supply of goods or services, a lot of fraudulent cases came. That is why this particular provision. And if the ITC is availed in violating the provisions of section 16, then also this can be registration can be now cancelled. Now, when we talk about rule 36(4), we all know that during October 2019, for the first time, there was a limitation or there was a cap on availment of ITC in comparison to GSTR 2A. Now, the section rule 36 sub-rule 4 of the CGST rule, which became effective from 9th of October 2019. Initially, it restricted a maximum 20% ITC that can be availed beyond the ITC which is not reflecting in 2A. That means if I have eligible ITC of 100 rupees, and if in my 2A it is showing 80, then 20% of 80 I can avail more for that particular month, because the supplier has not filed his return or paid tax. That is why it is not appearing in my 2A. Now that 20% was further reduced to 10% with effect from 26th of December. And through this notification, that 10% has further been reduced to 5%. That means if the supplier has not uploaded his tax invoice, not filed the return, and not paid the tax, me as a recipient or me as a taxpayer cannot avail ITC, and the excess ITC that can avail for such non-matching of invoice is only 5%. I'm sure many taxpayers, small and big, don't even prefer to take this 5% or 10% or 20% if it is not appearing in GSTR 2A, because that is too tedious a task to keep a track and to reverse it again if he doesn't file further. Number of cases have drastically come down. Number of cases of non-filing return or non-payment of tax has been drastically come down. But still then, we also follow the same for many of our clients for whom we file return or we guide. We ask them not to avail this differential amount of 10% or now 5% with effect from 1st of January 2021 because it needs a lot of calculation and lot of tracking and lot of follow-ups, and again reversal if it doesn't file it subsequently. Now we all know the reasons, like many times the taxpayer opts for quarterly filing of GSTR 1, or sometimes they wrongly file by giving wrong GSTIN, or sometimes they B2B and B2C classification they do wrongly. Some of the taxpayer even do some error while filing by selecting on RCM basis, even though it is on forward charge basis. So due to many reasons, it may not appear in 2A instantly within the due date. Now we are getting 2B also, which is getting auto-populated in our 3B for comparison. Though department later clarified that someone can edit those figures, but still it is giving us a kind of indication that how much of ITC that we are going to avail for the particular month is appearing in our GSTR 2A and 2B for that particular month. That is why this rule 36(4), which has been further reduced from 5% with effect from 1st January 2021, is again something which restricts ITC in the hands of a taxpayer. If someone claims more than this, then needless to say, many of the taxpayers have even got notice from the jurisdictional officer regarding the mismatch or availment of excess credit, and they can block also. In some cases, we have seen that credit has been blocked by the jurisdictional officer when it was availed more than the eligible percentage of 5%, now 10% before. Now, such notices, when they send a so-called notice for matching of ITC availed vis-a-vis the ITC appearing in 2A, the notice they are sending by email, and within 30 days it is to be replied. And those who are not tracking email, or those who are not tracking the additional notices in the portal, may also skip this. Skip the opportunity to explain, and that may lead to blocking of credit by the jurisdictional officer himself. So he can block also. Now, let me come to my other critical issues which I wanted to discuss. We have discussed about section notification 94. I will humbly request all of you to read this notification in detail, which contains many important provisions. We discussed about rule 36(4). When we talk about rule 42(1) particularly, a lot of issues we have encountered in respect to rule 42(1). Particularly, many times what we see, taxpayers who are engaged in who are engaged in supply of taxable services and exempt services, they are not supposed to avail the entire input tax credit. Rather, rule 42 is to be followed, which talks about proportionate availment of input tax credit. And I can give you an example, like there is a power sector company which is basically generating power, and they are supplying power. And they also have undertaken some government related consultancy work, which is subject to GST. So this is a taxable service, and sale of power, generation and sale of power, is a non-taxable service. Now, for this taxable service which they are rendering as a management consultancy service, they are also incurring some expenditure which can be particularly identifiable in respect to this consultancy assignment. And they also incur a lot of other common input services they get, which pertains to which is common in nature and pertains to both this taxable supply as well as the exempt supply, which is generation of power. In such case, what the company had done is they had taken the entire ITC, even the common ITC, which cannot be identified in respect to this particular taxable supply, that also they had set off against their outward tax liability for this government assignment. Now it was discussed, and it was observed, and it was discussed, and later they had to reverse it with interest. So that many a times, many even in another occasion, we can share our experience that in one occasion, a company is engaged in seafood processing, and they are exporting it, and they get rent, of course, when they are doing indigenous sale, and they are exporting. In another, okay, this example I'll not take, I'll give another example. Another company is engaged in printing and selling of newspaper, and they also have a lot of immovable property which they have given on rent. Now, newspaper is not within GST, as we all know, sale of newspaper, but this rental income what they used to get, against that they were setting off all their input tax credit. So this is something which violates the provision of rule 42, which someone has to be very particular about. if it is a combination of taxable supply and exempt supply, one cannot avail the entire ITC against the exempt supply. Now, another important rule, of course, two rules, 86A and 86B. 86A was in fact introduced much before, in somewhere during December 2019, where we discussed that any jurisdictional officer can block and debit, the ITC amount, electronic credit ledger. They can block electronic credit ledger if they find that the taxpayer has availed fraudulently or availed without receipt of goods or service, or availed without any tax invoice or debit note. So the jurisdictional officer can block your credit as per Rule 86A. Now, Rule 86B, which has been again introduced recently, is also equally important, because this rule says that taxpayer whose taxable value is more than 50 lakh. Of course, this should not include the zero rated and exempt supply, only taxable supply. If the taxable supply value or the value of the taxable supply is more than 50 lakh in a month, then they can use only 99% or maximum up to 99% of their outward tax liability, which they can offset from their ITC available. Rest 1% they have to pay in cash. This will certainly not affect many taxpayers, because this will not affect to government or central PSU or state PSU, or even cases where the taxpayer has paid income tax of more than 1% into preceding financial year. But still, in order to, lot of fake taxpayers who misutilized ITC credit by way of fake, invoices, just to curb them, probably government has again introduced this Rule 86B in this notification, which is again a very kind of stringent provision, and maybe to some extent undesired also. Maybe it is a temporary provision which they may withdraw after some time. So Rule 86A and 86B, someone has to understand. 17.5 we have already discussed. Order of ITC utilization with effect to 1st February 2019. We all know that earlier IGST was freely offsettable against CGST liability or SGST liability, but the order of utilization got changed from February 2019. But the way out is payment 09. What actually here some planning can be done in case the CGST liability, outward liability is more or less, and IGST credit is more, then PMT 09 can be actually used technically by a taxpayer to ensure that he pay only that tax, or he pay the differential tax and transfer it to the other head by filing PMT 09, and make the ITC available in respect to CGST and SGST equal, so that he can optimize his IGST ITC. So PMT 09 can be of help when someone has excess IGST ITC. Now, in many occasions, we have seen that the ITC rules, which are very difficult, it is very difficult for an outsider like a cost accountant or a chartered accountant who does a reconciliation by filing GSTR Form 9C. It is very difficult for him to see whether during the whole year the taxpayer has followed all rules pertaining to ITC or not. Whether it is payment of within 180 days, or availment correctly by way of correct possession of documents, or receipt of goods and services, or even correct rate and all. So usually what an auditor can do is take a management reply, or a kind of note where management declare that they have followed the rules and availed the ITC correctly. And there were certain instances where it could be possible that a taxpayer has availed IGST instead of CGST, SGST. ITC, I'm talking about input tax credit only, not outward tax liability, or similarly, vice versa is also possible. These were the these were very frequent and common issues which many of us we encountered. So in this case, of course, option to make correction by reversing it to IGST or CGST, SGST, or vice versa is possible till filing the September return of the next year. For example, for 2021, if someone has taken wrong IGST instead of CGST, SGST, or wrong ITC of CGST, SGST instead of IGST, this can be corrected, before in 3B. On or before filing September 21 return. But once that part is over, that period is over, it is actually it is not possible to make correction of that again, and certainly 2A will not match with that of your ITC ledger or purchase ledger. But again, a management declaration may be taken because it is a revenue neutral transaction and government can always make a cross adjustment. It is not a question of evasion. It is just a wrong head payment or wrong head availment. So those section 77 provides that there will be no interest for interhead wrong payment of tax. But still, it may create an issue in case departmental audit comes. ITC reversal and interest, we have also already discussed that in case of suo motu reversal, that is reversal done by the taxpayer himself on a self-assessment basis, ITC reversal of ITC will attract rate at the rate of 18%. And if it is pertaining to fraud or collusion or other departmental demand because of any fraud or so, then it would be 24%. Then input services and input tax credit when there is inverted duty structure. In fact, very recently there was a decision by this Honorable High Court of Gujarat, where the Honorable High Court of Gujarat, in case of VKC Footsteps versus Union of India, they provided that they gave a verdict that even ITC on input services can be availed by a taxpayer. Otherwise, it was restricted only to ITC, that is input on goods or input tax only. So that is why maybe we can expect an amendment in the acts in the future, that in case of refund claim, with a taxpayer should also be eligible to get refund in respect to ITC pertaining to input services. So it's almost 7:35 and I have consumed my time, and maybe we can interact after Madan Mishra sir completes his session. Thank you. Madan Mishra sir can now take his session.
Sir.
Thank you, CMA SP Padhi sir, for nice presentation and detailed deliberation of various rules and critical issues of ITC. If any queries on these rules and critical issues, please put your queries in the chat box. Now I would like to request CMA Madan Mohan Mishra sir, DGM Finance NALCO, sir, kindly address.
Good evening, everybody. So thanks a lot to everybody for giving me a chance to address this August group. So thank you, Padhi sir, for making my job easier. You have correctly expounded the provisions of law by clearly explaining the provisions of GST Act and rules. So I will like to share some experiences as I have dealt with while dealing with GST, tax in my company. So the first case is a company A wants to place an order for a turbine worth 300 crores to supplier B. Now, since it's a huge order, the supplier B wants a advance payment of 20% of this value as a mobilization advance. Now the company A wants to know what is the provision of ITC, whether it can claim ITC or not. So what are the options available for the company A? So before exploring the options, let us quickly flip through the provisions of section 16(2). So with your permission, I would like to stop the video. Now the provisions of section 62 the recipient should be in the possession of the tax invoice. The tax in the invoice would have been paid to the exchequer, and the recipient should have furnished the return under section 69. So in the particular case, condition A is satisfied. The supplier will issue a tax invoice, but condition B seems not to be satisfied as goods have not been received. Condition C and D will be satisfied because return will be filed and tax will be paid by the supplier. As supply is critical to the expansion of company A, and for the supplier B, payment is also essential because it is a huge order. So what are the options available? First, let us discuss about what is this supply actually. So it is a supply of predominant supply of goods, and some out of which some portion is service. So as per the definition of composite supply, it is a supply of service and goods, where goods is a predominant one. So as per section 230 and 8 of the CGST Act, it is a supply of goods. Now once it is a supply of goods, so what are the options? Now option 1, the supplier B raises an invoice saying January 21, and what company A decides to defer the input tax credit because goods have not been received. So then what is the deferred? So company A can take ITC till September 30th of next financial year. If the goods are not supplied, which are the probability of which is more, so the company A will forego this ITC, which is a huge amount. So company A cannot take that risk. Then what is the second option? The supplier will raise an invoice for this 20% amount. Basically, it's a design and drawing. Design and drawing has been completed, but it is with the supplier. Now supplier will raise an invoice for this 20% amount, and company A will acknowledge that design and drawing have been received. So can the company A do this? So let us expound. So explanation to 16.2b says, it shall be deemed that the registered person has received the goods, as the case may be services, but the goods are delivered by the supplier to a recipient before or during movement. Just I would like to emphasize before movement, either by a transfer of documents of title goods or otherwise. Let us emphasize otherwise. So actually the physical movement of goods is not required. Only the ownership has to be transferred. In this particular case, drawing and design, ownership is transferred because company A is acknowledging that design and drawing is complete. So he will recognize in his books that drawing and design has been received, so that the section 16.2b is satisfied, that goods have been received. Now other conditions have already been satisfied. The company A can easily take ITC. So finance professional perspective, so is there any issue? In fact, there is an issue. If it is an ongoing company, there is no issue. ITC, whatever ITC it is availing, it can be used against current liability. But if it is a new undertaking, there is no output liability. So the ITC will be accumulated. So no one knows when it will be used. So it is an ideal cash flow. So it has to explore the third option. As by notification 66 by 2017, no GST is payable on advances. So the company A can persuade the supplier B to receive an advance payment for this 20% amount. As there is no GST on this advance amount, though neither company, the supplier B has to pay any GST, nor it has to, company A has to go through the hassles of claiming any ITC. So it is clearly feasible, but the management may elicit some scrutiny from the external agencies. So why the interest-free advance has been paid. So out of the three options, company A has to explore which is best suitable to you. So if it is ongoing company, then option 2, that is the supplier raises the invoice, tax invoice for this 20% amount, and the company A receives the design and drawing in its books and claims ITC. Now in option 2, there is another issue. So section 2 says when goods are received in lots or installments, so ITC cannot be claimed till the last lot or installment is received. So can this part invoice be constituted as a lot? Supply in lot? It is not, because that section says goods in lots should be received against a particular invoice. Because here we are raising an invoice against a total 20% amount. So their goods are not received in lots against that invoice. Entire goods have been received against a particular invoice. So we are not violating that condition also. So option 2 will be best suited for an ongoing company. But for a new establishment, it has to explore from option 1 and 2. The presentation that's on the site. So now there is another case. There is a company which has a smelter and a coal-based captive power plant. Now it wants to have a lean slurry project for disposal of ash. Now the mute question is whether company A can claim ITC in respect of GST paid for the construction of this project. So now first let us see whether this lean slurry project is plant and machinery or not. So disposal of ash is a statutory obligation as well as a functional requirement of the coal-based plant. So there are a number of case laws in pre-GST era where the courts have held that this ash disposal system is a part of plant and machinery. Now there is a case of Ultratech Cement in which Sestat Delhi had held removal of coal fly ash is one of the necessity for running a captive power plant. Without such removal of coal fly ash from the captive power plant, the same cannot operate and run. In which case the power won't be generated and the appellant would not be in a position to manufacture their final product. So from this it is amply clear that ash handling system for a CPP is a part and parcel of the plant and machinery. And the lean slurry system consists of two pump houses and a pipeline having a length of 20 kilometers. One pump is located at the ash generating point and another pump is located at the ash disposal point. which is basically the words created by the mines. So explanation to section 75 says the plant and machinery are apparatus equipment this including foundation structural support part, but excludes land, building or any other civil structure, telecommunication tower, pipelines laid outside the factory premises. Now, whether this pipeline that is a part of lean slate project, whether it is a pipeline laid outside factory premises, now let us discuss. So if you can prove that this 20 kilometer pipeline is really outside the factory premises, then we are eligible for ITC, otherwise we are not. Let us go to Factories Act. Section 2M says, factory is any premises, including the precincts thereof, wherein 10 or more workers are working or were working on a particular day during the last year, which a manufacturing process is being carried on with the aid of power or ordinarily so carried on, and similarly without the aid of power. Now section 2K of the Factories Act, it says manufacturing process is any process which any process for making, altering this, including disposal or pumping oil, water, sewage or any substance. Now this lean slurry project is basically pumping of sewage, or you can say delivery or disposal of the ash. So a careful reading of section 2K and 2M means that fly ash disposal is a manufacturing process and the lean slurry system is a part and parcel, I mean plant and machinery. So the entire lean slurry project, including pipelines, is a factory premises. So since it is a factory premises, the pipe, that exclusion in 17.5 will not apply. Exclusion in 75 will apply if the pipelines are laid outside the factory premises. Since we have proved that these pipelines are inside factory premises, so that exclusion will not apply. So I will to reinforce this contention, I will just cite a Supreme Court case in case of in case of Adeshir Bhiwandiwala versus State of Bombay, wherein the appellant was extracting salt from the sea and it contended that open space is not factory. But disagreeing with this contention, the court held the word premises is a generic term meaning open land or land buildings are buildingable. So our contention by section 2K and 2M that the pipelines are an integral part of this lean slurry project, and the entire lean slurry project is a part of factory premises. And as such, the exclusion under section 75 is not applicable. So that will hold good. So Supreme Court case just buttresses our contention. So now we have clearly discussed that the lean slurry project, I mean this pipelines laid outside factory, the company will be clearly eligible for ITC. Now let us discuss in the many companies, the equipment is supplied along with some certain minor services, check installation, etc. So the company supplies the equipment and along with registers the full invoice for the full value. But the contractual payment terms are different, like 40% at certain event, then 40% at certain event, then 20% at the completion of installation, like this. So can the now as per section 16, the provider to section 16, the company cannot, I mean, if the company claims ITC and the payment is not, payment including GST is not fully made, then it has to, I mean, within 180 days, it has to reverse all the ITC. So will the company, I mean, should the company reverse this ITC? So let us discuss. So this is a company X. So the payment terms are 20% after transportation and 25% after assembly, 25% after foundation, and so on. So the invoice for the full amount has been raised. Now the issue with the company X, can it claim the ITC? So what are the options available for? Yeah. So let us, I have already discussed the provisional section 16.2, wherein it says that if the company fails to pay, so let us say emphasis on fails to pay. If it never says if the company does not pay, it says the company fails to pay the full amount, I mean the amount along with GST, then the ITC has to be reversed. So does the company really fail to pay to the to the supplier? Actually not. Since the contractual term is like this, the company will raise the invoice, but the the recipient will pay on certain happening of certain events. So the contractual terms are like this, and the company is paying as per the contractual terms. So the company has never failed to pay. Company has not paid, but company has not failed to pay. It has discharged its contractual obligation as far as payment is concerned. So the ITC is not required to be reversed. The same has been confirmed by the Tamil Nadu Advanced Ruling Authority in case of MRF. In discussion, it contained a registered person is entitled to take full credit of tax charge and the supply of goods or services under the provisions of let me go through it again. A registered person is entitled to take full credit of the input tax charge on the supply of goods or services or both. The provisions of the proviso to section 16.2 would come into play only where the buyer or the recipient fails to pay the supplier of goods the amount towards the value of supply. This is not the situation here. The buyer has discharged the GST charge on the transaction value at the time of supply. In these circumstances, if GST charge and paid is not reversed or refunded in whole or part, subsequently, in any manner or circumstance, the credit availed on the same did not be reversed. So it is clear, if the supplier has discharged the contractual obligation and have paid the full GST, it is really eligible for claiming the full ITC for the full GST amount. Now, let us, we all know the relevance of advanced ruling authorities, how disparate are their rulings. Now, just let us go through some, go through some examples. ITC on transportation employees. The Himachal Pradesh Advanced Ruling Authority, in the case of Prasar Bharati, disallowed the ITC on transportation of employees. In a similar situation, in case of Tata Motors, Maharashtra Advanced Ruling Authority have allowed ITC on transportation of employees. So similarly, in case of free samples and gifts for promotional activity, the Maharashtra Advanced Ruling Authority had disallowed in case of Sanofi India, whereas the Karnataka Advanced Ruling Authority allowed in the case of Page Industries. Now, goods and services used in the construction of railway sidings. The Chhattisgarh Advanced Ruling Authority has disallowed in case of NMDC, while in a pre-GST regime, the same has been allowed in case of Bimla infrastructure by Chhattisgarh High Court. Now, GST in respect of construction services. In case of Safari India, Odisha Safari India was constructing the mall and providing rental services. While the Advanced Ruling Authority had disallowed the ITC to Safari India for the input, for the GST of inputs, Odisha High Court has clearly said, since it is providing rental services, so the input for construction services, the GST for input of the construction services, the ITC is eligible. Whereas in many cases, the Advanced Ruling authorities have disallowed this GST on construction services. I hope I have gone through the cases. So, Padishar, if you can continue.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much for your practical insights from your experience and learning. I think we have got a few questions in the chat box. We can take them one by one. Raj Chandra sir is asking, can ITC be reversed on theft of goods from entities' premises? Sir, section 17, subsection 5, clause H, particularly restricts goods lost, stolen, destroyed, written off, or disposed of by way of gift or free samples. So this is a blocked credit. If there is theft of goods from entities' premises, or even before it reaches to the premises of the entity, then ITC will be blocked. Ultimate objective of government is the end user has to take the entire burden, and here unfortunately the end user is the taxpayer himself, so he has to pay tax. Same thing happens when professionals like us, we raise professional bill and we never get GST. Sometimes it gets bad debt, but we pay GST when we raise the invoice. But in case of bad debt, neither we get our fees nor get the GST, but we have already paid the GST to the government. So, sir, ITC has to be reversed in case of theft of goods. Madan sir can always add and substantiate.
Actually, we are having we experience regularly such situations. So we are having transit losses. So we are transporting goods from our smelter plant to branches. So we have transit losses. So what we do, we reverse the ITC in respect of these losses. So this is the provision as per section 75. Then we reverse the ITC.
In case of insurance, we experience
that is a separate provision. What we claim from insurance company, what we get, that is a different aspect. But as far as compliance aspect is concerned, wherever there is a loss, so first of all we reverse this ITC, and if any interest is payable, we also pay the interest.
Yes, reversal is must. But when we talk about insurance coverage, and ultimately insurance company will also not pay it to the taxpayer until and unless the taxpayer reverse it and file GSTR 3B and submit a proof of reversal to the insurance company underwriter.
Actually, I have a different stand, Padishar. Actually, that is a contractual obligation. Whatever we have in the contract, so that company has to honor.
When we in fact issue survey and loss assessment reports, in our assessment we do not recommend the GST amount which ITC has been availed by the insured. We ask the insurance company to pay it to the insured only when insured reverse it. That is a stand taken by all insurance company, public and private. So even what Madan sir said, tax amount can also be reimbursed or payable under a contractual insurance agreement, but insurance company ask for reversal first, then only they pay. This is what we do in real life when we survey and assess the loss and recommend for payment to the insurance company.
Probably that is a surveyor's point of view.
Yeah.
As far as the company is concerned, whatever there is in the contractual term, it is normally the assessable value plus GST. So that we insist upon reimbursement.
Yes, tax is also to be paid by insurance company, but in many cases it is after only reversal. Fine. The next question that we have got from Sanjay sir, where e-invoicing applicable to unregistered buyer B2C. Yesterday, Deepak sir covered it, Sanjay sir. I think you also attended yesterday's session.
Any more questions on ITC actually? So we may address if you can.
Yes, Kedar Patra sir has one question on ITC. Kedar Patra sir is asking if a person has taken excess credit on GSTR 3B erroneously. Madan sir, if you can take up this question, it is there in the chat box. Please take up the question.
Yeah, just can you read out actually? Yeah, I'm unable to view this chat box. So can you read out? I just if a person take excess credit on GSTR 3B erroneously and reverse the amount on next financial year, some ITC used in that year excess over GSTR 2A till that period up to reversal in GSTR not adjusted but pay the amount on DRC 03. Actually, I couldn't follow you. If some excess ITC has been taken through GSTR 3B, it has to be reversed along with interest. So it depends on when you reverse actually. If it is before September or any time, even during the filing of annual return, you have to reverse it. If it is before September, then through normal return, or if it is at the time of annual return, then it has to be through DRC 03.
Kedar sir, if you can unmute and discuss the question a bit more elaborately. Kedar Patra sir.
Yes, sir. So that person taken the ITC in year 18-19.
Okay.
But reverse it in 19-20.
Reversal was done for what reason? Why reversal?
Excess taken ITC erroneously.
Ineligible or reversal due to rule 42 or which rule?
Rule 52.
Achha.
How much interest? 18% or 20%?
Achha. If he is reversing it on self-assessment basis, it is 18%. Rate of interest would be 18%.
Okay, but sir, in GSTR 9, he not adjusted it. After GSTR 9, notices came to him.
Then it is 24%.
Okay.
Yeah.
After notice, then it is 24%.
24%.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. 24%. Yes.
In the next financial, the reversal amount is also in GSTR 9. Excess is there also. Then what he can do in GSTR 9 for 19-20?
Sir, once you have filed GSTR 9 for 18-19, okay, where you said you had not done the reversal in 18-19.
In 18-19, not done the adjustment. So excess credit is there GSTR 2A and GSTR 9.
No, once notice has come and you have paid interest and along with interest from that, okay, you have done reversal in what, 9 or 3B?
In 3B.
Okay.
In 3B.
3B of 18-19, right?
Okay, sir.
And 18-19 GSTR 9 also you have filed, right?
Okay.
Now notice came and you are paying the interest, right?
Okay.
So pay the interest and forget. It is not to be shown in GSTR 9 of 19-20 again.
Sir, reverse is taken in 19-20.
No. You said you have reversed it in GSTR 3B of 18-19. No, you have said.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Sir, whenever you have reversal done, no, in that particular GSTR 9, it is to be reflected.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes. And Santanu Panigrahi sir has a question. If the SSC decides to reverse credit under Rule 42 and the SSC is having sufficient credit in credit ledger throughout the whole period, is interest is still leviable? In my opinion, no. Department may demand, but in my opinion, no, because my credit was there in the credit ledger. And that clarification has also come, but I think it is applicable with effect from a particular date, not with an earlier period. So you have to, Santanu sir, you have to check the period actually. It is for which period? Santanu sir, if you can unmute and tell this is for which period? Because if I'm not wrong, it's
Sir, good evening. Sir, good evening. Sir, this is for 1920.
If I'm not wrong, this provision became effective from 1st April 2020. That if credit is there in credit ledger, then even if for reversal, this interest would not be applicable. Please check that notification. I have a Fed memory. As per my Fed memory, it is applicable from 1st April 2020. That means from 2021. Before that, it was not applicable. It is not from retrospective effect.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
But
Sir, the view does not differ even if it has come to the it has been brought to the notice of the assessee after audit is completed. I mean, if it is observed in audit also, no interest is leviable. No?
Audit means which audit you are talking about?
Departmental audit.
Departmental audit. Yeah, for 20 from effective date onwards, it should not be subject to interest. But as I said, this notification came with effect from probably 1st April 2020. Before that, 17, 18, 18, 19, and 19, 20. One has to check up whether it was because this provision has not been implemented with a retrospective effect. It is implemented from the date of notification only. So that date you have to check and check it pertains to which period.
But Paddy sir, we can always contain that no interest is payable if you are having excess credit in the credit ledger. So there are a number of cases, high courts giving in favor of the assessee.
Yes.
So if the company decides to not charge interest, it may lead to litigation. But in view of different decisions of high courts,
yes,
it can always go in the favor of assessee. So
yes,
that risk can be taken.
Yes, I have also read somewhere that maybe the department is taking a softer stand, not becoming strict for the earlier period, though it is from a prospective date. So, Santanu sir, you should not pay interest on your own till there is a demand and you contest.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
So next question is from Sanjay sir, who is asking, can ITC be availed on canteen bill and packaged drinking water? Yesterday also we had this question. I think Madan sir explained, discussed about his the AAR of NALCO itself. Sir, if you can address this issue, canteen bill and packaged drinking water.
In case of NALCO, we have not actually gone. Gone for this ITC on canteen services.
Yes.
Our specific plea was for township expenditure on township.
Yes.
And guest houses.
Yes.
So what the Advanced Ruling Authority, they have disallowed the ITC on township, but they have allowed it on guest house.
Yeah.
So the department has gone against this guest house ruling, and we have gone against this township ruling. So the AAR. And the AARs disallowed everything on township as well as on guest houses.
Yes.
Now, as far as canteen services are concerned, if we are charging full value for the output, then I think we are eligible for taking input as credit on the inputs. But if we are charging concessional value, suppose say 20 rupees per meal, but our cost of meal is, the cost of inputs are rupees 100, and there is an anomaly, so which may lead to scrutiny. Technically, if output service is taxable, inputs are ITC eligible. But here there is an anomaly, so it may lead to scrutiny.
So two things are very important here. One is in course or furtherance of business, that is to be examined, which is no in case of canteen bill, because that is certainly probably not quite fitting into in course or furtherance of business, number one. Number two, food and beverages are specifically blocked under 17.5. And rightly explained by Madan sir, if it is subsidized, absolutely no. If no subsidy, absolutely on a commercial basis, then ITC can be availed subject to discipline. It may department may tomorrow.
But sir, canteen services are excluded, but not same type of service. If I am procuring a particular service and providing the same type of service, then it is not excluded by section 17. So any person providing canteen services can take ITC of the services.
Same line of business is always ITC is always available.
Since after that Kerala advance ruling, number of companies are paying GST on canteen services.
Okay.
Whatever they are recovering from the employees. So in a way, they are providing canteen services to the employee. That's why they are paying GST on the whatever they are recovering from the employee.
Okay.
So to that extent, ITC is eligible. But since the ITC is huge vis-a-vis the supply of service, then it will lead to scrutiny. If they are paying the market price as per section 15 valuation rules, then they can take ITC.
Okay,
It may not lead to scrutiny.
the rate is to be verified. Again, food attracts.
So that is also, of course, if they are paying 5%, then ITC is not eligible. If they are paying 12% or 18%, then ITC is eligible.
Now, Santoshini Misra madam has one question. One, security service personnel provide the security service and raising the invoice for rendering both taxable and exempt goods and services. That is manufacturing of goods and as well as training provided to trainees in one premises. It is not possible to differentiate the specified area of manufacturing and training. How ITC will treat in the books of accounts. Madam, if you can further elaborate the situation. Santoshini Misra madam, if you please can unmute and elaborate the situation.
Padi sir, first, since ma'am is not responding, let me just, since ma'am is not responding, let me go through this here. So she is saying that, I mean, the service is procured in relation to manufacturing as well as training. I think training is a part and parcel of manufacturing also. So like in case of NALCO, the training center or whatever, that is a part and parcel of our manufacturing activity. So as such, we are taking ITC in respect of our training center. So if she is saying that it is the services are procured with, I mean, in relation to the training, then that is, I think, in furtherance of business, so the ITC can be taken. When from a cursory, I mean, study, it seems that ITC is eligible for furtherance of business.
Yes, ma'am is writing there is some supply of exempt goods and services.
That is not understandable. How it is exempt actually? Because training is a part and parcel of business. So normally ITC is eligible.
But if at all there is a combination of taxable and exempt, then proportionate ITC can
proportionate ITC has to be taken.
Yeah, if any ITC cannot be identified with in respect to particularly taxable supply and books of accounts are separately not maintained, then proportionate ITC can be availed if there is a mix of taxable and exempt supply of goods and services, goods or services. Another question by Sandeep sir, in case a company have 2 branches and a supplier supplies material to branch 1 and wrongly raised bill to branch 2, they can then can the company take input in branch based on the EUA bill raised? Sir, is it a centralized registration or they have 2 different registration for different branches? Sandeep sir.
Yeah, actually, it is having 2 registration in 2 branches.
So then it cannot.
So there are 2 distinct questions, no?
Because there is no tax invoice actually.
Yeah, the tax invoice is raised in wrongly in the other branch.
Yeah.
So then can the input be taken from the other branch?
No. Then it has to issue a credit note, then the correct invoice has to be issued.
Right.
Yeah. So the one option is it is pertaining to which period?
No, it was pertaining to 1920.
1920. Then the time period for issue of credit note has expired. Actually, credit note can be issued till September 20.
Yeah, but please check whether amendment of invoice in this one GSTR 1 is still allowed or not. Few days back we were checking and it was allowing amendment to invoice in GSTR 1. If that amendment can be done, then probably you have a chance.
But Paddy sir, an amendment to GSTN is not possible. You can amend values of the taxes, but you cannot amend GSTI.
Number is not.
Only option is to issue a credit note, but the time for which has already gone.
Already gone.
Right.
Yes. Unfortunate.
Right.
Sandeep sir, nice talking to you after a long time.
Yeah, thank you. Right.
Discuss about order of ITC utilization. Yes, sir. Now the IGST credit is to be utilized first. IGST is to be fully utilized against IGST first. Then the balance is to be utilized for CGST. Then if balance IGST credit is still left over, it is to be utilized against SGST. So after consuming the IGST credit in full, then only CGST credit can be consumed or utilized against CGST liability. And if balance CGST liability remains, that can only be utilized against IGST. Same in case of SGST. So here what is happening, many taxpayers are, they are now finding difficulty. Some of them, they experience that they have CGST credit with them, but they have to discharge their tax liability in cash for SGST liability discharge. So that is what is happening. And government had changed this rule because they found that IGST credit was remaining unutilized for a very huge amount, and that was creating difficulty for apportionment of states here. That is why they said no, IGST is to be consumed first. And so that is how PMT 09 can be utilized in this case actually. So the balance, tax after utilization of IGST for a particular month tax period, someone can transfer excess payment of CGST or SGST to IGST or CGST, SGST accordingly can plan actually the tax payment. But the order, as you have discussed, IGST is to be exhausted in full for IGST utilization, then CGST, then SGST, then CGST is to be utilized against CGST and IGST, and last SGST is to be first utilized for SGST and then balance if any for IGST. This is the order of utilization of ITC. What we experience sometimes practically is the portal auto-populate some data. Sometimes that is not in line with the rule for utilization. So that someone has to be very careful about, because those figure, even though they auto-populate, someone can get it, and order of utilization is to be confirmed in that way. Madan sir, if you want to add.
No, it has to be, whatever is auto-populated, it has to be corrected actually, in line with the law. Normally we do it.
Yes.
Now, Paddy sir, can you just go through the ma'am Mr. Query? Just it's not. I cannot make out what
it is proportionate. Yeah.
How it is proportionate. If it is in one premises, it is not possible to identify for training purpose to deploy trainings, as well as manufacturing of plastic products for sale in the market.
No, madam, you have to actually first examine the ITC, which ITC you are actually you want to avail. If it is pertaining to manufacturing of plastic products, which is taxable, if you maintain separate books of account for manufacturing of plastic products, which is taxable, and the ITC is pertaining to manufacturing of plastic products, then you can avail the entire ITC against your taxable liability in respect to manufacturing of plastic products. But if it is a common ITC, if there is some input goods or services or even capital goods which is for a common use, both for training as well as manufacturing, then that common ITC has to be proportionate. But if it is exclusively in relation to manufacturing of plastic products, then you can avail the entire ITC against that liability. Madan sir.
Yeah.
You can add if you feel like.
No, it has to be like this. If the ITC pertains to a particular business, then it has to be exhausted for that business only.
Yes.
And if it is common ITC, then it has to be prorated.
Yeah, but yes, for in that line only the books of accounts are to be maintained. That means
businesses have to be separated.
Yeah, separate ledger account and documents have to be maintained.
But it seems that it is a single business and there are trainees which will be inducted into the company, I think, for manufacturing. So it's it's not a separate activity actually. It's a part of furtherance of business. What it seems actually.
Correct.
So sir, I have a question.
Yeah, I think we should have more questions.
Yeah, very sure. There is no more question.
So,
let's go for closure.
Yeah, just a minute, sir. Just I would like to extend my thanks. So I just beg my forgiveness for being brief. Actually, this was my past webinar. So I think I was a bit brief. Thank you, Paddy sir, for making it good.
Sir, you have very rich experience and we are proud of you, sir.
Actually, I thought I was a bit brief.
Thank you very much, sir. This is a very interactive session. Once again, very good evening to all. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to extend formal vote of thanks on this auspicious occasion. Before that, I would like to request CMA Mukesh Chubey, Chairman of Chapter, please come and give a memento, present a memento to our today's guest, resource person M.M. Mishra sir, as a token of love and affection. Thank you, sir. I, on behalf of the organizer, extending heartfelt thanks to the today's research person, CMA SP Paddy sir, and CMA M.M. Mishra sir for nice presentation and detailed evaluation on the topic. My sincere thanks to all the senior members, past chairman of the chapter and EIRC joined in this digital platform. My special thanks to the members of Managing Committee of Bhubaneswar and other chapters of Odisha for taking initiation to conduct educative session in virtual platforms. I convey my grateful thanks to all the participants who have participated personally and for their continuous support. I am happy to express vote of thanks to staff of Bhubaneswar chapter for their effort. Thank you all for continued support and cooperation. All are requested to join the WebNet tomorrow at same time and with same link. With this, I hereby announce the closure of today's evening. Thanking you all. Jai Jagannath. हाँ, 9:30 जाए। 8:30 जाए करते हैं। हाँ।